Hello and welcome to another monthly installment of Lean Catalysts, Strategies and Tactics for the Transformational CEO. I'm your host, Damon Baker. I'm the CEO of Lean Focus. And in a few short moments, I'll introduce you to today's guest, John Marotta, who is the CEO of Azenta. Good morning and welcome, John.
Good morning, Damon. Good to be with you.
Likewise. So in a bit, we'll talk about John's background, and this is going to be version 2. He's a second-time participant on Lean Catalyst, so we'll get into a little bit of that as well. So before we do, a few housekeeping notes. Everyone who is listening today is in listen-only mode. And if you notice at the bottom of your Zoom webinar control panel, you will see a chat icon. I encourage you to type in questions for John that we can answer towards the end of today's session together. And I'll answer those in a first come, first basis. This presentation will actually be recorded as well, and it will be posted onto our YouTube channel, Lean Focus LLC. Usually comes there about a day after the interview is concluded. In addition, we also post a link to these interviews on our website. Go to leanfocus.com and navigate over to the thought leadership page. You will see all of the prior Lean Catalyst interviews that you can watch in archive, and even register for future upcoming Lean Catalysts as well. So with that, we'll share a little bit about John's background. So John has joined Azenta Life Sciences. It's a publicly traded company. We're going to get more into what Azenta does here in a bit. In September of 2024, as the president and CEO, he has over 2 decades experience leading global companies in life sciences, med device, and diagnostics. Prior to joining Azenta, John was the executive resident Patient Square Capital, which is a leading healthcare private equity investment firm. And prior to his role at Patient Square Capital, he was the CEO and president of PHC Holdings, which was formerly Panasonic Healthcare. This was a KKR venture in med device, diversified global life sciences, diagnostic and med device company that focused on precision healthcare. He also helped to lead that organization into its first IPO with KKR Capital. Prior to that, he held a variety of senior executive roles in life sciences companies, including Danaher Corporation, Invista, which is a spin-out of Danaher Corporation, and Cardinal Health, where he demonstrated consistent achievement in organic revenue growth, operational efficiencies, and significant value-creating transactions. John has also had a career in sales leadership for therapeutics and other med device offerings. And on the education side of things, John's got his Bachelor of Science from the University of Dayton, Go Flyers, and his MBA from the University of Denver, Daniel School of Business. And he resides in Colorado with his wife and lovely 3 children. Morning, John, again.
Damon, good to see you. Good morning.
Yeah. So I said this is our second time around. The first time we did this, you were at the PHC group role, and you were knee-deep in an organizational transformation there as well. And we can talk a little bit about how that one is maybe different than this one. And before we get into we have a lot to talk about today. Before we get into it, I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts on what you're excited to talk about today, and why you agreed to do this the second time.
Sure, you bet. Well, listen, I think in Lean, in any Lean journey, there's always a number of topics we can discuss, and your journey changes over time. You know, with Danaher and Panasonic Healthcare, we were on a different Lean journey. At Patient Square, it was a different Lean journey. And Azenta, the Lean journey still is rooted around our customers, our shareholders, and our employees specifically. What I'm excited to talk about is really those topics today and where we are in that journey. I mean, Azenta is a publicly traded life sciences company. We've got really 2 main segments. Our segments are around multi-omics, which is testing and analytics for biopharma, for medical research and academic research. We've got a great brand there. We do next-gen sequencing, we do gene synthesis, we do oligo manufacturing, And so it's a great business that we can serve our customers and, more importantly, enable these breakthroughs around research. It's a great business for us. That was a business we acquired in 2018. Our other segment of the business is around what we call sample management solutions. And really, it's a misnomer because it's around biological asset management. And I'll talk more about this in the importance of that. And so what we've seen in this tools revolution is the output of data, and data in the tools revolution is assets. And assets are compounds, small molecule, large molecule, therapeutics. You have samples for active clinical trials or therapeutics and manufactured products. Those started to, when the tools revolution came, they went from 1,000 to hundreds of thousands to millions of outputs of this data. You have to manage that, and you have to manage that with a biorepository. And customers do that either on site with their own biorepositories or with us in highly regulated environments. We have
Can
stores.
you explain like a biorepository? Because like it sounds simple, but it's like really, these are
It's
massive sort of things, right?
these are massive footprints around managing biological assets, whether that's manufactured products, whether that is samples, patient samples, whether that is small molecule compounds. And that is done in environments of ambient temperatures, which is effectively room environment, room temperature, negative 20 degrees Celsius, negative 80 degrees Celsius, or negative 190 degrees Celsius. Okay, in those forms, you have to think about archival in this way, meaning a low touch archival versus a high touch archival, meaning I, as a customer, want to access that product at a lower touch or a higher touch retrieval. And in these high touch retrievals in a biorepository, you need automation because it's hard to scale a biorepository when it's manually done. It's very hard to do. And so we have what we call stores, which I think is also not doing us justice from a marketing perspective. These are highly technological automated units, and the temperature from negative 100, negative 190 degrees Celsius, which is an automated cryo unit, versus a store, which is a highly automated bank of freezers where you have a robotic picker working in a very cold environment. It's very hard to manufacture that product and design that product. We have those capabilities here at Azenta, which is pretty exciting. And I can get into the use cases of each of those, but the use cases are pretty important because when you're accessing samples, you do it at that small pick level, then you don't really the other samples in that environment are not exposed to the ambient temperatures, which degrade the sample. And so those technologies are really important around our biological stores that we can pick those things very quickly. And then lastly, we have what's called our consumables and instruments business, where that is anything that manages those biological assets. So in these highly specialized tubes, that the tubes are of high quality because when you have a specimen in there, biological specimen, you don't want leaching. And so quality matters. How do you track that? A lot of times in this industry, things are tracked with handwritten labels. We have 2D, 3D barcodes. And so in automation, it matters in that workflow matters a lot to our customers. So we have those capabilities. We also automate PCR plates and have an automated workflow. So it's really an end-to-end solution around testing in that workflow, around managing these biological assets that the tools revolution has increased the output of those throughout the years. And the journey we've been on we come out of Brooks Automation, which was a semiconductor business, and they started a life sciences group. Spun out a few years ago TH Lee bought the semiconductor business. We are a publicly traded company in life sciences. Got a big balance sheet. So you talk about this portfolio we have, and we've got a very strong balance sheet to deploy capital against that. So it's exciting, the journey we're on, and much different than the last time we talked.
Yeah. What I like about your background is I think oftentimes people sort of fall into the trap of what I call like cookie cutter lean, in that everywhere I go, I follow the same approach regardless of what the situation needs or the current situation or areas of efficiency or gaps are. And I've seen it throughout your career where like every one of those stops in your career was a different type of transformation that required not only a different approach, but a different even style of leadership from you, given the situation that was in. So if I were kind of to describe PHC Group, there was a lot, I mean, kind of a lot of things kind of happening going on at the same time, like getting ready for IPO, knitting together really like a disparate group of companies that were just completely different, and then trying to put it all under one banner and one business system and one way of operating. And then you had sort of the regional challenges and cultures and things like that, and different organizations bringing their own cultures. And then to top it all off, 7 out of 10,000 of the employees were actually Japanese. So you have the American CEO running seemingly a Japanese company. So as if they're, that was a hard one, was just to say, right? But you adapted the situation to fit the needs, and then you kind of look at Invista, and even Invista was, a different animal, and kind of what had to be done there. Like you spun out of Danaher, and then you had to create kind of a stand-up, newly publicly traded operating company, and you're leveraging some of the kind of the principles and tools of Danaher business system, but you're kind of pioneering kind of how this looks like in the dental space. So I would describe, and I don't know how you would characterize this, like your career is about building. It's like building and kind of fixing and kind of like creating like these new things of renewal, like these phases of renewal. It's never been come in and maintain the status quo. Are you just a pain seeker, John?
There is there is an element of that, because I think, it's funny, doing hard things is where the reward is. And it's not about me and the reward for me. It's about seeing our teams do hard things and excel. Like I get the most joy and pleasure from seeing our teams reach their full potential. It has been really a joy in my career when you see people, when you start to implement lean thinking in the organization, which is effectively stripping waste out for the customer. But what it means is you push decision making down into the bowels of the business, and you allow people to make decisions at the point of impact. And for me, seeing people thrive in that environment is what's most exciting. But there is a lot of pain with it, because you have this turnaround phase. You always have this turnaround phase. And I think you described it well, where Invista was this spin out. We were one of the least profitable medical device companies in the United States, if not the world. So we had to restructure that business. We had to stand up all of these global functions that were really integrated inside of Danaher. We pulled them out, we stood them up. We did that with the Invista Business System. And so we ran at that very quickly. My assignments were always short-term in nature. And so you feel the pain of that journey, and you're going through that with your teams, but there's green shoots of this culture element that you're implementing, and you get excited about that, because the teams are clearly, some of them are reaching their full potential, others are going through that learning curve and that curve of transition and transformation. And so you don't get to see all of that, which is the challenge you have in some of these turnaround environments. Same thing at Panasonic was very similar, but you had a cost issue and we had somewhat of a growth issue. It was more on the cost side, very similar. And so you go through that, but you see green shoots of areas that you can move through the transformation much sooner. And so what I love about this situation we're in is there's no clock. Okay. meaning there was a clock on Invista. It was, we had to get the company IPO'd and profitable in a very, it was profitable, but we had to get the P&L in a much better place from a profitability perspective than it was. And there was a clock on that. And in Panasonic, it was get the company ready for an IPO in 10 months. That is that is a lot of pressure where you can't push sand down an hourglass as fast as you'd like it to. So there's always going to be some glass broken around that. Here it's both, meaning there's this element of turnaround, but we're taking a longer term point of view on it. It's how we're measuring ourselves is speed matters in certain areas and it doesn't in other areas. The trajectory is let's just get better every quarter and let's make decisions for the next 5 to 10 years. That's our decision-making criteria. The pacing is there though. I mean, make no mistake, we're pacing the organization quickly in certain areas. And then others, we don't need to do everything this year. There's always next year. And so that element of turnaround, yes, in certain areas, but the opportunity at Azenta is really unique. If you just look at the financial opportunity, it's top line growth and operating margin expansion. That's very unique. There's not a lot of companies that enjoy that type of profile. So we have both. And so there was a book that was written years ago. It's called Barbarians to Bureaucrats. And it talks about leaders. It was written in the 90s. It talks about the evolution of where a company is in its journey and what that leadership style you need at a certain point in time. And I've always taken that to heart where, yes, there are certain traits that I have as a leader, and I take those with me everywhere I go. And there are certain things that are just non-negotiable. But there are other things that you've got to change yourself to the situation you're in and what the situation needs. And it could be there's more directing in certain areas, but there's more coaching and mentoring in other areas. And I think that's been enjoyable for me in my leadership journey is just understanding what does the company need? Not what John offers, it's what the company needs at this point in time, going through that cycle of barbarians to bureaucrats and understanding the transformation that the organization needs and how you have to move quickly in certain areas, but you back off and you pace at a different pace in other areas.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about PhD group, and oftentimes in private equity, you're up against a right bound timeline, meaning in 3 to 5, something maybe 7 years, there's an exit, there's some M&A event or something. So you prioritize all of those things you're talking about through the lens of I need to exit in 5 years, and it creates this decision filter of I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to stay focused on these levers because I know I have to achieve this exit. And so the pressure is different, the approach is different, and I've seen you kind of in a couple different environments now where it seems like it's not as I don't want people to perceive this as the wrong idea because I know there's still a lot of productive tension in the system at Azenta, but like it feels more like long-term business building. You're allowing people to sort of maybe dictate the pace a little more. You're not pushing as much to kind of move the organization towards something, which is kind of getting everybody towards this exit or this event. And it really seems like if I were, personally, if I were to like choose which situation would I rather be in, it's like this building over time and creating something of like sustainable value creation over time. Get consistently, you just said, consistently get better quarter after quarter. And as long as we're demonstrating the ability to do that, we're doing the right thing. So like, how do you view it that way, or kind of what's your perspective? Like, does the situation feel different to you and like you're adapting your approach deliberately, or you're kind of like John no matter what?
It's very intentional. It's very intentional in terms of how we're viewing it. Some areas, and I tell this to the teams all the time, like we're laser focused on quality and delivery right now. Why? Because we're not meeting our customer expectations. It's not about what John wants, it's what the customer needs and wants. How do we drive more performance there? And we've been very thoughtful about the pacing of this because the situation is ideal. And what I've told the teams is we're going to let fires burn. The big fires that are burning right now, we're going to go after those. We go to where the biggest problems are and the biggest opportunities right now in this phase of turnaround, because we've had to restructure the P&L. We went very quick, and we paced the organization very, very quickly there. I mean, that was 8 months, very fast. Why do we do that? You've heard me talk about this before, where it's around people, structure, and process. You got to get the right structure in place, get the P&L kind of directionally where it needs to be. And there's always things you can do to optimize it. But if you have the right structure, the accountability lines are drawn down functionally down to where the customer is. So the point of impact. So that was the first step of that. We moved very quickly there because I wanted to get clarity into the organization. The other two areas around people and process being lean implementation. We're installing lean where we need it right now. Other areas we don't, which goes to your point on this very thoughtful. Yes, it is. It's very intentional because we don't need to bullwhip the organization. We're not on that 5-year clock or that 3-year clock or a 10-month clock to go take a company IPO. We can be very thoughtful around building long-term shareholder value through high-quality products that are delivered on time, that are the right products, priced correctly in the right end markets, and looking at it systematically. Make no mistake, though, a lot of people's pace is different. I mean, my pace still is at a level maybe others aren't, which is fine, but we're moving at a pace that I think is healthy for the organization, but it still creates the right amount of tension for the team in terms of being uncomfortable. Why do I say that? In a good lean environment and a lean culture, you're always uncomfortable because you're learning. You're constantly learning.
You're moving to the next problem every time. So
You
it's like,
move, yes. And what do I tell the teams? Like, just put one foot in front of the other. Because I get a lot of questions around this environment, geopolitical environment. I said, well, what do you do when you're in an uncertain environment? You know, I've done a lot of high altitude mountaineering, and when the storm, you always have your plan, and you're climbing up a mountain, and the storm comes in. That's an external factor. Right now, this geopolitical environment's an external factor. What do you do? The number one thing is you worry about safety and your team members, and in this instance, our customers. So, and when you can't see in front of you, the fog comes in, you just slowly put one foot in front of the other and execute against that. We do that independent of if there's an external storm or not. I just want people putting one foot in front of the other and improving on what they're doing today. Make it better, not make it perfect, make it better. And part of that making it better means I want people to make mistakes because it means they've made a decision. Part of the thing that I love about lean is it forces a decision. It always forces a decision because either you're red or green, you're winning or you're losing, and you got to figure out how do you get back on your plan. And so what I love about that is in order to get back into winning, you've got to make a decision around that. Sometimes you make the right decision, sometimes you make the wrong decision. I want people making more decisions, making more mistakes, and keep moving in the right direction. Statistically, those organizations that do that win over the ones that don't.
when you flip that switch, when you go from, you talked about structure, corporate being a centralized structure, which slows down decision making, which moves you further away from the customer, all those things. But then culturally, when you flip that switch and you get all the boxes the right way, and you decentralize and put the responsibilities in the business. So on paper, everything looks like it's been streamlined to serve the customer. But can you describe mentally, like, the crevasse that people have to cross if they were in both environments? So it's almost like, the person who was held hostage all their life, and it's like, now you kind of like break out of that, and it's like, who am I as a person? What's my true personality?
Right,
So
right.
do people find that uncomfortable? Like when you said the decision is now yours to make, versus waiting for direction, or do people run towards that with breath? fresh air, or is it kind of a mixture of both? Can you kind of describe, and you're probably not through it all, I'm sure, because those changes were in the last couple of months.
So we restructured, we made the decision, I'll talk in calendar quarters at this point because we're on a different fiscal year, but we made the decision in calendar Q4 to restructure corporate very quickly, and we execute on that in January. And then our operating companies came online to execute that last quarter. So I saw a lot of communication back where it was, well, who do I call in corporate? And who do I talk to about this? And who do I talk to about that? And I said, well, I talked to the teams and I said, listen, everybody wants to be a leader, but no one wants to own the results and the accountability that comes with it. The title's wonderful, but you got to own the results at the end of the day. And that means this, this, and this. And therefore, you're it. There is no one to call. You're the person in this function. You're the person in that function. And you as a team, when it comes to high risk decisions, you want to bring those in and have a conversation together. If it's real high risk, we'll go have a conversation together around that with some of the corporate team members. And so that was kind of the first element of that, you always have a friend to call, but you're the one that makes the decisions and you're the one that owns the results. And so I think the teams are moving through that right now. They're doing a good job of that. And I mean, our organization, Damon, we are so fortunate to have a culture that we have. And I've shared this with you in private, but I think it should be shared in public. The benefit of having these smaller companies that we acquired is you have a different mindset. These are our team members are not big company individuals, meaning they don't like bureaucracy. It frustrated them. That's why a lot of people left. We have people coming back now, actually. They want to come back because the bureaucracy is gone. The matrix organization is gone. I don't believe in matrix organizations at all. People can hide in those. And so you've got this mentality coming back into the organization where I own it today and we're all on a team. We're here to help. That's the beauty of our culture is it's never left us. We just needed to breathe life back into it, and we're doing that today. But for some, it's new because sometimes they want to potentially allow others to make decisions for them or kind of bring it up, and we say, you go figure it out. We trust you. Go figure it out. Because I just view it as low risk. If it's low risk, they can make it, and if they screw it up, that's fine. We'll keep moving forward. That's been the fun part of this journey.
I'm always fascinated by like VH1's Behind the Music, where they profile an artist and they talk about like how they made this hit song and the process that they went through. And for many of them, it's like, it's a science and they have a literal process. For others, it's like creative spark and ingenuity
Right.
to keep them. So I've watched you now a couple times in two different businesses, and I think you have an approach from when you start to kind of get your hands around the business, uncover what the big themes are, and then move with decisiveness to make those key strategic decisions that have to be made in short order. So can you kind of go back to September? You talked about one thing that you did, which was like in December and in January, kind of carried over into the next month as well, like the restructuring, the decentralization of corporate down into the autonomous business units is kind of one key thing you did. But that was bolstered by an approach that you took from September to December, kind of look out across the businesses. I know another one was selling an asset that you guys own. So take me behind the scenes, VH1, John Marotta, first 90 days CEO. Like I watched you. You have like this notebook you carry around, and you take this copious notes. You're constantly typing down things. You've got the iPad there. So open up the window and show us what the magic is, and how you get your arms around a business so quickly, and then move with decisiveness and make kind of like the decisions, honestly, that I would argue that your predecessor should have made.
Yeah. The first thing is, from my perspective, I assume nothing. And I assume people have the best of intentions and the right motivation. I always go into that. And so that's kind of the first thing is I just ask a lot of dumb questions and I'm not embarrassed by that. And so I go into this deep learning mode. I'm still in it because we're still getting our arms around some of the businesses. So that's kind of the first thing. And the second piece of it is it's it's always around clarity around the portfolio. So we had an activist involved in the stock, Quentin Coffey and Politan. I mean, he's great. He's constructive. Everything kind of the environment that we were going into, I knew that ahead of time. People said, John, you need your temperature checked. You're going into a situation with an activist. I said, but coming from private equity, like I agree with his perspective on things. And so read a lot about his point of view on the business, agreed with it. We had 3 activists in the stock. What does that tell you at the end of the day? Compliments come in all forms. We weren't reaching our full potential. Okay, why? First thing, where are we at from a portfolio perspective? Are we in the right end markets? Are we serving the right countries in the world in these right end markets? Where our customers are? Who are our customers? Who do we want to do business with? At the end of the day, it's around biotech and pharma, medical and academic, and government. That's where it is. And there's only a certain number of countries in which we look at doing business in. Right now, we're in over, if you look at B Medical, we're in over 125 countries included. Now we're in less than 50. I think we even pare it down there more. So that's the first thing. Where are we doing business and what's the portfolio? We made a very quick decision around B Medical. It didn't fit in the portfolio strategically. Went very, very quick with our assessment, spent a lot of time. You know, our term that we use, we call that Gemba. That's where the work is done. We went deep in that assessment around B Medical very quickly and made the decision within a number of weeks after the assessment to sell the business. It's a great business. It's not a good business for us strategically. That's all. And so that was the first step. Portfolio, understand the shareholder situation, understand the board dynamics. We've got an incredible board. Alan Malice, former Thermo Fisher for 20 years, worked for Mark Casper, the only executive to work for Mark Casper directly for 20 years. Amazing operator. Martin Medeiros, former CEO of Merck Millipore, incredible operator. Bill Cornog comes from KKR. He ran kind of the Danaher Business System Group, which is called Capstone of KKR. Amazing skill set. And then Quentin, they're on our value creation committee. So we set this up very quickly like a private equity operating model. And then we've got our other board members of DePaul, Robin, Tina, and Erica on our board. And of course, our chairman, Frank Casal, who was the number 2 at KPMG. We're very fortunate. So that was the situation and environment. The second step was understanding how we were doing business internally. And so understanding that structural element. We confused the organization. We had a lot of things centralized, R&D centralized, marketing centralized, sales operations centralized, finance, HR. So
SG&A as a percent of sales was?
We're not public with that. Our SG&A, you asked SG&A, we're public with that. That was 41%, very high. Our G&A, which was extraordinary high, we're not public with that number. It was very high. And so we understood that the P&L wasn't where it needed to be. The decision-making wasn't needed to be where it needed to be. So we fixed the structure. Because how do you expect our people to be successful if they don't have the right operating environment? The reason I started the conversation with our investors, our board, that's part of my operating environment. I mean, I report to a board and our shareholders own the company. I work for them. And so then you have to go down and understand where are our employees in that structure. So we went quickly and pulled out the operating companies, pulled out R&D, pushed it back into the organization, gave clarity back into the organization. So that structural element, I want people to win. I want people to be successful. We were frustrating people. And so the speed of decision-making increases when you do that. Now you move over to process and people. The benefit of having a business system is you teach people how to do the work. And so I talk about this portfolio, this structure, fix that. Okay. Then you go into process and people, or people or process. Well, I believe we have the right people. Once you install the right processes, our talent blossoms. Some people like that operating environment, some people do not. There may be people that self-select out. I'm aware of that. I'm okay with that. I tell people all the time, I don't want you to ever, I don't want you to leave the company, but if it's something that you want to do in your career, I wish you well. And you always have a place back here at Azenta. We have people coming back now, which has been really exciting. And so behind the scenes, implementing process, we're doing that right now. That is daily management. That is getting visibility around value stream mapping. We're doing that with you and your team and these lighthouses that we have globally to map the value streams, attack the biggest problems. And so what we discovered through implementing at the top of the house, one compensation plan, which cascades down to 8 core value drivers, cascades down to KPIs in the business. Everything translates. Now we've discovered we've got a couple issues. What are those issues? It's around quality and delivery. So we're focused around that. Then,
Clarity.
go ahead.
Clarity.
Clarity, precisely. And so we're laser focused around that. And now we're teaching our people how to do things because I believe deeply in culture. And so that's my lens of the world when I go in and unpack a business. Spend a lot of time with customers to understand what problems do they have? How do we help solve those problems? Are we good stewards with them? Do we serve them according to their expectations? What are their expectations around product installation, service calls? How are we easy to do business with? Those sorts of things. So spend a lot of time in the field with our sales reps and understanding that as a part of the assessment. Going to each of our sites, going deep with our teams, and just listening. And so that informs me on kind of where we are and what we've got to focus on short term. But then you've got to take this lens on long term. Is always a balance of short term versus long term and both. So that's kind of the behind the scenes. But lean's always a big part of that because it allows you to get visibility into the business very quickly, where you just focus on what matters. And what matters to us is our customers.
I'm always curious, and I don't think I've ever asked you this question. How did you sell lean to the board, or did you even have to? Again, what was that conversation about? Like, when did you have it? Kind of like, because I imagine there's probably varying levels of understanding and experience amongst the board members that you named with a lean business system approach to running a company. So how did that go?
There was there was there was no selling lean. It's an expectation at the company. And that was excited for me before I joined the company. I mean, that was a conversation we had a lot around the business system and how we're approaching it. Kind of the same thing that I talked about on people, structure, process, and how do you thoughtfully implement this in a business. The board expects it. We report out on this, every quarter, the board, in terms of how we're implementing things, the Kaizens we're doing, those sorts of things. It's just how we do our work. And so there's a deep understanding at the board level, both from the operators, but the others, on the board in terms of their understanding around how lean's been implemented in some organizations they're on the board of, and or kind of the Danaher business system and those sorts of things.
But it doesn't sound like you had a whole lot of challenge there or questions about, why now, why do this?
Not at all.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, so, I probably should have been keeping a tally mark of like how many times you've said the word customer since we've started 39 minutes. So it's probably pretty high. So I saw a stat and it blew me away, and I probably misquoted this, but something like in the last 3 months, publicly traded CEOs 50% of them haven't seen a customer in the last 3 months or spoken with a customer in the last 3 months. It was something crazy like that. And I saw that and I was like, how is that possible that the people you serve, you haven't even talked to them in the last 3 months? So you made it your mission in the first 90 days, and I'm sure you still make it your mission to routinely talk with customers. And I know you routinely talk with the ones who are probably not the most happy with you all the time first to try to uncover the problems. Because sunlight's the greatest disinfectant. So how do you, again, behind the scenes, like what's driving this customer focus and kind of, even if you think about the lean work that you guys are doing with Azenta Business System, it is laser focused on Q and D for the most part, I would say, quality and delivery for your customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of companies have lost their way in terms of why we exist. We exist for our customers, for our shareholders, and our employees support that. And when you create an environment where it's really customer focused, people want to come to work. They want to excel. They want to deliver value to customers. Our mission is amazing. I mean, we enable breakthroughs faster. That is research, medical research. That is curing cancer. That is curing chronic diseases. That is curing, you know, making an impact in society globally. Like, what? It's amazing to have that type of mission that we have in our organization. So when you install the core value drivers, we're clear about our 8 core value drivers, meaning there are 2 for customers, quality and delivery. If you think about any business you're in, whether that's you go to the doctor, whether that's you buy a cell phone, whether that's you buy a product on Amazon, what do you care about? Is the product or the interaction of high quality, and are you getting the product or service on time to your expectations? Not to our expectations, your expectations. Okay. So quality and delivery, we started looking at that in each of our businesses. We have a lot of work to do, which I'm very excited about the work we're doing. We're making a lot of progress in quality. Okay. We're not where our customers want us to be. Then on delivery, same thing. We're not where we want to be on delivery. And so when we started unpacking that, I mean, I hear it everywhere now. We're laser focused around our customers. Yes, we should always do that. That's why we exist as a company. So first thing, that kind of installing that core value driver helps with that. Second thing is we've got, our metrics around what shareholders care about: top line, operating margin expansion, working capital, and return on invested capital. We're obsessed around those 4 on how we run our business. We're stewards of capital in the company. Capital deployment comes in really 4 forms. You deploy capital around gross margin improvement and productivity, growth in quality, growth in R&D and commercial. But you got to have quality and delivery underneath that to grow. So we're working on that. The third is around M&A, and the fourth is around buybacks. We look at those things equally in the business, all of them, because we can pull all of those levers. In our hands today are levers 1, 2, and 3 today. Lastly, it's around employee metrics, and that is around turnover, meaning is our turnover, are people leaving the company, and then do we promote from within? We call that internal mobility. And so those are our 3 stakeholders and customers, and I take that very serious. The organization takes that very serious in terms of how we're serving those. But the laser focus around that quality and on-time delivery is we're beating a drum in the business and a metronome in the business that is not going to go away. And the teams know that. They're galvanizing around this right now, and our customers are starting to see it.
What are you most excited about as you look ahead in the next 12 months?
I'm most excited about the highs and the lows that come with any journey. I always tell people, like, if success was linear, we're cheating. I mean, it doesn't work that way. The highs and lows are how you galvanize a culture. how you see people excel in their careers. I mean, I get emails from our team members a lot. I get to talk to our team members when I go to the sites. We always have lunches together. And I get to hear from them on, we're working on this, we're doing this, or what ideas do you have? Go do it. And so I get excited around people reaching their full potential. And we talk a lot about culture, but no one really defines culture. I define it as the place where you can show up and be your best. And you can influence being your best. Like that's a very different way of defining culture. That is where you show up and you say, I love being in that company because I can influence the outcome of this culture. And in lean cultures, you can do that. That's what I get most excited about is when you put lean into the business, people can affect their outcomes of their culture because you allow them to do that through kaizens, through making decisions. That's what I get most excited about is this journey, this taking this longer term point of view around how we drive a cultural journey. The last piece of it is around innovation. And we haven't even gotten, yes, we have automation. It's high tech automation. There's not a lot of companies have what we have. But from an MPD perspective, these R&D investments, we're implementing automation in our biorepositories that no one else has in the world. Not hyperbole, fact. Okay, no one has it. What I'm excited about is we're very early in those investments in R&D. So I get excited around the growth profile of the business because we're early there. We're making some growth investments, but our investments in R&D have not really been seeded quite yet.
You think the market's sleeping on the stock right now? Blink, blink, blink twice if you agree.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had earnings last week, so I can talk about this. We're kind of through this blackout period. We're getting some long only investors in our stock. We're pretty excited about that. We've had a lot of inbound there. That's going to strengthen the book, our shareholder register a lot. The dislocation was real around, there were a number of headwinds. First was NIH funding headwinds. We can, and I'll talk about how we countermeasure this, but let me go through.
All your controllables. It's the mountain climbing example.
Yeah, exactly. It was NIH funding. You had the China tariffs. You had China restricted listing for Illumina, one of our partners over there. You had steel and aluminum tariffs, and you had China asset freezing potentially. So when you have a weak book of investors, um, and the broader market was kind of softening around life sciences anyways, everybody hit the exit. Okay. I mean, we just saw a lot of insider buying this week, where we view our stock as very undervalued. Again, I don't look at the stock every day. I'm looking at it over the next 3 to 5 years and how we execute against our plans to drive shareholder value. I think there's a massive dislocation around that. If you look at our cash versus the actual enterprise value, $12 of our stock price is cash. I mean, that is remarkable. The market will wake up. We just need to continue to execute against what our plans are and drive shareholder value. But I'm excited about our balance sheet, our ability to deploy capital against that. That's what I get excited about.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to work with you again. You ready to take some questions?
Let's do it.
This question is about the business system and kind of how you thought about kind of organizing the business system and kind of what were the pieces you put in place to get that installed in Azenta.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the first thing is and Damon always knows, like when I go into an assignment, it's always I always call Damon and say, hey, where are you at? Where's your team at on this? We always want to bring in we look at it as a swarming element to the business in terms of our sites and installing the business system into our sites very quickly operationally to start to attack that quality and on-time delivery. And then at the same time, driving gross margin improvements and productivity. I look at those as one and the same. And so I always call you, your team comes in, and we deploy those resources against exactly the core value drivers and the KPIs that we talk about. It creates this productive tension because the organization then can look and say, oh, these consultants are coming in, and it creates this productive tension. I don't want an unproductive tension. And that's why your team is always a critical component of what we're doing, because culturally, you guys always help us and support us. You're not a bunch of wingtip consultants that come in and act like you know everything. They're a part of the team. They're helping us think through our problems and installing that. So that's the first step of it, is the lean implementation. We always look to you and your team to do that. Then it is, how do we do it on our own? Because you got to get performance quickly. That's why we want you guys in. Then it's how you do it on our own. We hired Will Simmons around to lead the Azenta business system. We have a group of individuals inside of the business system team that were here before. We're just teaching them these new tools that we want to implement. It goes to the same point I brought up, is I don't want everybody leaving the company or us moving people out. We can teach them what to do. They have the skills and capabilities. We're excited about that. Adrian leads our innovation group. She's done a great job around that. We've got some other team members in that are helping lead daily management and those sorts of things. So that's kind of the first level, is productive tension, consultants. And what I love about you and your team is you guys always say, hey, we're going to teach you what to do. We're going to leave eventually. It's pretty unique that you have a business model that you put yourself out of business.
Maybe I should rethink that.
Maybe you should rethink it, but at the end of the day, you've been very successful for a reason, because you and your team deliver a lot of value. We speak daily. I mean, that's the other thing you said, kind of behind the scenes. You and I are speaking every week. We're driving, we're very, very prescriptive around where we're spending our time in the businesses and what KPI we're trying to drive performance against. And so I think about lean in terms of lean manufacturing, gross margin, quality delivery, lean innovation, growth, marketing, launch excellence, and understanding how that growth engine works from an investment perspective and on the leadership side.
Awesome. This next question is about M&A. I haven't heard you talk about M&A as a value creation lever. What are the plans there? Are you guys looking at that?
We are. So we've got there's some actionable targets that we have today in our hands. When I talk about capital deployment, that's kind of the third lever around capital deployment and M&A. We've got a funnel. We're nurturing the funnel right now, and we're driving performance around that specifically. I'm excited about our targets. I think what's going to be different and a departure from prior management is, that saying, you got to mind your knitting. We're focused on our core, and that is biorepositories. How do we expand that and grow that? Because we've got automation capabilities where, if you look at the gross margin line, that's going to continue to get a lot better through automation. And so we're going to continue to build on that portfolio, our products business, our automation business, and we're looking at some things with GeneWiz. So M&A funnel is working. David Wang, who was running SMS, is helping to support us there.
This next question is about influencing leadership, particularly as CEO. So I am struggling to convince our CEO that we need to embark upon a lean transformation journey, as they did not come from a place like a Danaher, and I feel like I'm starting from scratch. What advice would you give somebody who's trying to get the CEO to take notice?
Yeah, I would reframe it that you want your CEO to talk to other CEOs on how they do their work and how they drive culture and performance. I would suggest you take it off of your hands, and they can call me. You can go text Damon. They can call me directly. Call other CEOs that only know how to do things from a lean perspective. I mean, we talked about my lean journey years ago, and it's been a journey. I've been in companies that don't have a lean orientation, but I've been in companies that do have a lean orientation. I mean, Synthes, the company I grew up in, was a medical device company. Hans-Jörg Wyss was the owner of that company. We're very focused around lean. Not a lot of people knew that, but we were the highest growth medical device company, and we had a lean background and culture operationally. It was amazing. You want to be able to call those CEOs that are in that environment. So the CEO has a peer-to-peer discussion, because ultimately, um, you may be pushing a rope here. Let others do the selling for you around that from their experience. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and we've leveraged you in that capacity many times. We've sent referrals your way and
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
This question is about leadership behavior, and it's aimed towards your executive team, like your L1 team. So if you were to describe one leadership behavior that you find most challenging to install in your leadership team as you make this transition to a lean business system type of culture, what behavior would you say is the most challenging to install?
It's I'm not with our team, but I think in general, it's you got to own your results, and performance matter and results matter. But you can get there. I talk about this all the time. I talk about this with the board. You can get there with good behavior or bad behavior. Bad behavior is pretty short term, and you want to get there with good behavior. And from a leadership perspective, we look at that, right? You can get good results with good behavior. You can get good results with bad behavior. You can have bad results in good behavior. Or you can have bad results in bad behavior. Like, what do you want? And so, from my perspective, you want to have both. You want to have results, but good behavior. What does that mean? You're fair, you're consistent, you're friendly. I mean, sometimes you've got to direct teams in a manner that's more firm. But as long as you're firm and consistent with how you're behaving and how you articulate where the teams need to be, I think that's important. I mean, leadership's hard because it's a balance. And sometimes you got to move fast. You're directing very quickly because you've got some big customer issues. Sometimes you need to slow down and let the teams kind of get there. Um, but in general, it's the results piece. You own the results. That's hard for people to understand and sometimes comprehend. I don't worry about that here.
Yeah, I think structurally the things you're doing make it clearer, like where the accountability lies. It's certainly helpful, but I think mentally people still have to make that change. To your point.
They do, and I think I'm thrilled with how the teams are adapting to that. Um, but it's always a journey. I mean, some people don't want to manage their finances. They want to get a financial advisor because if the market goes down, they can blame them and not, they don't have to blame yourselves. But it's the same kind of mentality of you got to own your results.
This is an interesting question, and I don't know if I've ever seen
Sure.
this one before. What parts of the business system from your prior experience, whether it be Danaher or Vista, did you purposely kill and not bring with you to Azenta?
Great question. So having grown up in high growth companies, uh, that I think some business system environments I've been in around the growth side, it's been lacking. I think operationally it's been there, but on the growth side, it really isn't focused where it needs to be. What do I mean by that? Funnel management, that's a mathematical exercise. High growth companies, they talk about deals and what the customers need. Like that's what matters to me. It's customer by customer. What does this customer need? How do we go support them in a better manner? And how do you drive process around that? Because some lean cultures are focused too inward, meaning they're so focused they think the process and the lean implementation around growth is the work. That's not the work.
Optimizing Salesforce and
Yeah. The work is actually in the field with customers, with making sure they're out in the field with customers. What does this customer need? So having those conversations that are structured, I've heard some things around growth rooms. We leave those behind. I mean, it's around driving our salespeople, our service people in the field, our product managers in the field. What are they doing to support our customers, going deal by deal and understanding literally what we have to do here to serve them? And so that is a departure from some of the business systems I've been in, but we're bringing that type of rigor. It's a great question, by the way.
Yeah,
Very thoughtful question.
so I'll put it on my top 10 list.
Yes.
That was a quick 1 hour again. So we're gonna have to do version 3.0 of this here when you retire.
Well, listen, Damien, I'm humbled and honored that you've asked me to come back again. I'm deeply passionate about lean, and I'm passionate about it because it galvanizes a culture, and that's what we're here to do. Behind every logo is a group of people, and when you approach it that way, when you put the customer first, when you put our investors really second, and our employees right there in the middle of all of them, that's how you galvanize a culture. And I love these conversations with you. I'm grateful to you and your team being involved in the company. We couldn't do it without you. And I'm thrilled that you and I could go have these conversations again. I'm passionate about it. So thank
And
you.
I really respect you. I respect what you're doing. You're doing it the right way. You're leading that organization to greatness. Such a humble guy. You have so much to give. I'm just honored to be part of the journey. So it's great. And thanks again. So for those that have been listening, we want to encourage you to take the valuable insights that John has given us today and try to implement those lessons into your own organizations. If you have any further questions or would like to explore the possibility of initiating your lean transformation journey or rebooting one, don't hesitate to reach out to us at Lean Focus. And again, thank you, John, for your contribution once again, and we wish to see you all in next month's version of Lean Catalyst. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day. Bye now. Bye, John.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
Bye.